Hello, this is Prince from MediaSFU, and today I'll be providing a quick guide on how to install our Community Edition application. So, briefly, we'll be taking a look at four things. The very first one will be cloning the repo, and then the next we'll take a look at how to install the packages from our package.json, and for Linux, which we'll be presenting primarily for, we'll take a look at how to configure ports and a firewall, which we do have an extension guide for those on Windows and Mac to follow accordingly. Then finally, we do our Nginx configuration um, for production, and most importantly, our SSL certificates, which are very key for allowing WebRTC to work. And then we just test the application to make sure it works accordingly. So for a very quick guide for users in terms of what we have in the application. At a very high level, you have the most important file either being index underscore localhost or our index.js. These two files are your primary backend server. You could make use of one of them. The only difference between the two files are one referring to this um, SSL folder, which is primarily a folder in which generate some, let me see, pseudo or dummy SSL sets and then run locally on your system. So other than the reference to the local SSL, these two files are primary, right about the same. So on the other hand, if you're comfortable with your way around the application and then you would like to save your own front end as an Angular, React, or React Native, or any of the SDKs that are pre-supported, you could just right away get rid of these two endpoints as in the public and the public out. The basic task they do is that they render a pre-built UI front end, which is one public out being a waiting room where you wait, you pre-configure your event, and then you transition to your actual event room being public. If you're not rendering the default UI, or if you look at modifying it, which we don't really advise, you can pretty much just get rid of the two and then comment out that from your index.js or index underscore localhost, whichever one you are working with. And then effectively you just communicate directly with your server via the SDK of your choice. Okay, so quickly we just go through our steps. The very first step being getting our server ready, and I will just be following this guide, the guide provided in the installation in Ubuntu. If you've used Node.js before on Windows or Mac, you pretty much have everything covered. The rest is probably firewall. If you have done something or if MediaSFU before, also you should have 99% of the work done, and then it should just come down to something like installing a new package. Okay, so we'll go through this. I think I'll briefly go through step 1 and 2, and then I'll skip the installation of Nginx so that we can do the local SSL for those who are on Windows and Mac, and then they will be interested in that. And then eventually we are going to switch back to step 3 and everything that covers this Nginx that's in basically 19 to the end. That will write about it be the plan for today. And just a quick side note, I'll be doing this mainly on Linux on a virtual private server, which you will need with a terminal access if you are to run this in production. So I'll pause here and then just quickly switch to DigitalOcean. You can go to Amazon or anywhere, whichever site you can get access to, ideally a tool called server. So just as an illustration on yes, server setup, and this from DigitalOcean, like I described, Particularly, you just want to figure out which Linux you're using, and then go to anything, I think 22 and above, and I think 26, 20 should still be fine. I'll just stick with the 24. And then, like I mentioned, regarding the choice and the specs of the server, mostly your usage with it's MediaSFU comes down to um, just bandwidth usage. So you don't really have to worry about your RAM and then your CPU. And its CPU, so far as I mean, you can stick with one core, which is this, let's say, the $6 option. But then I would just advise um, something with at least two cores and above. So it's two CPUs and above. So which to me would just be this $18 option. And you are not going to see any CPU rise about maybe 10, even 15%. And same for your RAM, probably just right about the average usage. And then yeah, I'm just gonna set up some domain credential for now, and then once I get to set it up, the key thing we need from here is our IP address. You need our IPv4 address to get our application that would work. Other than the SSL, I would say this is probably the most important thing before our SSL configuration. So back in our application, after getting our server and IP address, I'll just proceed to follow the guide here, which is basically updating the packages of our Linux server. And then to do that, I first need to SSH to log in, and I'll be doing that from my IP address. So quickly grab accept this password. I mean password for now, which I'll just drop that and paste. Okay, so finally we managed to get access to application, and um, I'll do this step by step as illustrated here. So the very first step is the updates. I'll copy this, and then I'll just paste that. It probably take about 2 minutes maximum, um, depending on how much of updates involved. And I will just copy the next command as I with this, um, which is primarily our install of Node.js. You would want to work with something at least 16 and above to get the application to work. But in this case, you're looking at 18. So copy this command and then um, run this. So it should be pretty fast as compared to the very first command. Okay, so we will skip the next option is to install Nginx, but for now we'll just skip that and then complete the setup, after which we return to this as described. So So I'll just proceed with the step 4, which is basically our firewall and ports setup. It's this. Let's enable this as well, which is 5. And I go with step 6, which is the ports. So depending on your provider, you might have restrictions regarding the number of ports you could have open and the like. But then ideally anything 100 ports and the like shouldn't cause much of a problem. So everything here indicates media flow for media for WebRTC, which is UDP and TCP. We allow HTTP and HTTPS by default to get OS and the like. And then finally, we allow port 3000, which our application runs on. So if you would like to change dates from 3000 to something, maybe 5000 and the like, you can just change this here and also change this in your index.js file. So for now, I'll just run this as it is. Okay, so we are done with 6 and 7, and then the very key part is calculating of our repo, which you can just get this command even up top from GitHub default, or you can just use this from here. So if I copy this and I paste our window, you're gonna have that downloaded in a fraction of a minute. Now we can just make a quick check to make sure everything is fine, which hope it is. Let's add which, and then yeah, we are gonna have a couple of malware index underscore localhost and the like. So now to the very key part, which is removing the existing package log.json and then running our install of our own packages. So we come to step 9, which is installation of our packages. And this should also not take that long, probably a minute or so, and it should be done. Okay, yeah, so we are done with our installation of our packages. Now, the very next thing we do is we can try out the application, but then once more, like I mentioned, the very key part of this setup is changing your IP address. At least if you don't do anything at all, you have to change the IP address in the uh, index or index underscore localhost file. Now, as it is now, if I try to run the index underscore localhost, there'll be an error because it tries to read an SSL, the files in the SSL folder, which by default, if you make a quick check here, we are going to see they are empty files. So SSL, if you make a check of local.com.key, you realize it's an empty file here. Same with local.com.ped. So you would like to at least populate this with the actual credentials before you do run your application. So, but then index.js has no reference to this. So it just runs as it is. And so far as you haven't actually saved an actual Nginx SSL, then it's just going to run over HTTP. So let's go back to our application, and then in my application, what I would do is to just edit the index.js file for now to point to my IP address. So I'll just do sudo admin, and then I'll just do for both index, and the very key line is the const IP line, which I'll grab my new IP address from the Linux server and then paste it. So um, okay, so So when I have my IP address, I'll just quit escape and then write and quit this. I'll do the same thing for indexes localhost, as I'll be using that to demonstrate the local SSL files generation. So I run the same command. By this time around, I'm going to target the index.localhost file. Okay. So also same thing, I'm just going to insert and then get rid of the dummy IP. And then I'll just place my IP address here. And same way, I'm going to write quit to save the changes. Okay, so we do have our index and then index underscore localhost confirmed to be working now. So we can just proceed to run our application. And then with this, we have one of two options. Like I mentioned, you can run your localhost or on the index localhost file. Sorry, index or index localhost. Then if you look at our package.json, which does that, we have the scripts for running either. So there's a start, we just runs the default production app, and then there's the local for the local host, and then there's also the prod, which is pretty much the same as the start, and then the dev local, dev prod, this just listen to real-time changes in the file, which is via node mode. So I can start off with the stats, which is pretty much fine. I'm not making much changes to the next file. You could just run dev local if you're in local machine, or yeah, basically just whatever you're dealing with, whether local host or local. So I'm gonna go back to my server and I'll just do sudo npm run. So I'm just going to do npm start to start the actual the index file. You can just run run local, run prod, and the like. So sudo npm start, and your application is running on a specific port. So to check this out, you can go straight to our browser with a combination of our IP address and the port number. We can access the application as it is. So I'm gonna switch briefly to my browser just now. So this is going to be IP address, which is, and if you're working locally, your IP address would just be your local network's IPv4 address. So it's hit your network panel and just grab it from there. Okay, so if I hit this URL now, I have by default the 404 page, which is rendered in the public auth file. And then what this does, that it prevents access to unsafe files. You either go straight to meeting/start, which when I click here, it takes me there, or you go to specific to a meeting room. Now, by default, you realize that uh, there is no camera selection trigger and the like here, which should have happened by default if you were to be an actual SSL saved site. So just as a check, if you were to go to MediaSFU.com, the one saved by the old URLs, you should be able to see your camera just pop up, but because you don't have access to SSL, you don't have it popping up, which means our application is not just going to work without configuring that. Okay, so we go back to our app and then we continue to configure our SSL certificate. So in here, I'll just stop the server now. Control C, and then if we have to proceed with a generation of fake certificates, like local certificates. We'll go back to our guide. Yeah, the guide that helps us to generate that, we can just take a look at the map or setup, for example, around 0.4, which is the local source certificate. It says we prepare the file and then we copy paste this command in the file. And then from there, we just run the file, change the permissions and run the file. If Windows, you just go straight to here, you don't really care about the permissions from there. So just follow these steps to create a local file, just as you would have done for your local instance. And it's still not going to make any difference in this, so in this case for production as well. So I'm going to get this file name and then head to my application, and then I'll just create a new file with sudo main, and then I'll paste this. So in here, I need a command, which is this whole thing here. And this is kind of a dummy command which targets US and some specific states. If you have Canada, for example, or in a country, you can just change it to whatever you desire. So I'll make a switch to my application, and I'm going to paste this in here. What I do now is to write and quit this. So essentially, this will run the code and it just populate our SSL folder that used to be empty in our um, application currently. So the next one is to change the permissions, which is provided here. Then finally, I run it by doing this. Okay. So now we eventually have our SSL certificate generated. Now to just cross check if you want to be sure that it's actually generated, I can just print out the file. So you're gonna go to sudo, then you're going to name the SSL folder, and then it's going to be a local. Just so you're sure of what you're typing, I'm just gonna go up to that side, and then SSL folder again. There is a local.com.k, local.com.pem. So just print out one of them, and you can confirm. So local.com.k. And we can have a printout in our window, which indicates we actually have this field now. So I'll just click this. And because we are going to serve the local SSL file, we need to run the index and the localhost file. So I'm not going to run the prod file because it doesn't have access to that. So I'll do sudo npm run, and then I'll do local. And you by default to realize it's just running the index localhost file. So I'll head back to my browser once more. Head back to my browser once more, and this time around, I'll just go straight to the HTTPS endpoints because I do know it's served currently. So I'll type HTTPS in the browser, and then let's go straight to it. And as usual, for self-signed certificates, you have to always accept these certificates. Security risk. So I click advance, and then I'm going to proceed to that. So instantaneously, you have a trigger of camera request, which is accepted. You're going to see this pops up as opposed to the first time. Okay, so just to confirm everything works, I've created a new meeting, which is starting a new meeting. I just need a name. I'm going to go to answer, and then I'll confirm. And we have a meeting. If I click on the camera, I'm going to have my camera started. I can join this meeting as another user. Let me just grab the link from here. And then I'm going to paste this in here. It should pre-populate the ID. So when I just confirm, I can go straight to, let me see, new name. Have my application running with the user. So when I turn on my camera, you have the same both himself, the self view, and then the new user. So that effectively it confirms our application works. You try out anything screen share, audio, and everything should be fine as expected. But then we really don't want to be going through the security issue every time. So to do that, we will have to go back to our setup and then configure our Nginx and then get an app SSL certificate, which you will need domain name for, whether you get that from some local popular or some cheap free endpoint. It doesn't really matter. So just you need a domain name to be able to proceed with the final steps. So I'll just quit this now. And back in our application, I'll head to steps. I'll head to step 3, which is skipped, and then come down to the rest. And I will direct this server to community.mediasfu.com. This could be any endpoint for you, but as you wish. But then just to illustrate, I'll just make sure you see that this doesn't go anywhere for now. So if I hit community, subdomain.mediasfu.com, hit enter, you realize it's not a site that can be reached currently, which means it's not served. So I'll direct my domain, the domain to point to this IP for this specific sub domain. So you can also do accordingly as you can from your provider. So I have directed my IP to that now. Now the very next steps we have to follow are the steps for configuration. So I'm going to copy that step right now, which is getting Linux, and I'll stop my server currently and then just paste one. Also, while this is installing, I will just run down to the continuation. So we ended at the installation of the dependencies. So we'll proceed with our setbot stuff. So setbot practically gives us our actual SSL certificate. So I'll copy step 9, step 10. And in here, I'm going to paste our installation. Just install setbot for us. So this should run a couple of seconds, and then we need to configure our Nginx OS Nginx configuration to point to wherever we are working at. So this is a dummy URL, domain host example.com, this in case of MediaSFU.com, and then community.mediasfu.com. And by default, the saved file is at this link, so you can just grab this, and then I'll just use sudo bin. So this is the default file, as I mentioned. I don't really need all of this, but then it's up to you to decide what to keep. If I hit small d caps G, I'll get rid of everything in the window, and I'll just come down here and copy this as it is. This as it is. So I'll copy this and then paste this right there in there. Then from here, I need to hit I, and then I need to change the example.com to MediaSFU.com. So it's going to be MediaSFU, MediaSFU.com. And this is going to also be community. Once I change to community.mediasfu.com, which is my subdomain. Okay. So I pretty much have that configured now. I just save that with escape, right click again. And if you want to test the Nginx configuration, you can just do sudo Nginx test t, and everything is okay, perfect. The configuration. Okay, now one key step now is to actually enable the configuration. So I think it doesn't really say that here. You need to actually enable before you run the which you can still run it, but you need to enable the configuration to get that to work. So I'll enable this and then just run my setbot configuration. Doesn't matter which order. So I have the same command as we did for the restart, which we are yet to run, but then just going to be enabled instead of restart, in case you're not sure of the command to enable. So I'll just paste this command and with the with the enable option as opposed to restart. So I'm just going to enable this for now. Yeah. So the very next thing I do is just run my bot, which uh, is the command on like 12, which gives me my domain. And also once more, this is not going to be example. This is going to be my community .mediasfu.com. This here and then change example to community. Okay, so if I run this, there'll be a couple of things I need to ask, and then I'll use info shift out to USFW.com. So go to use. I'll do yes to this. Or I can say no here. Then within a couple of seconds, it should be able to give us. Okay, so we do have our um, configuration just done now. And now we can check per the guide. Our setup could look like this after doing this. So we can just cross check this from our updated configuration. So I'll hit the sudo command again to open the configuration part. So if I hit this again, we do have the SSL part added in here. So this complex our SSL certificate part. I'll just escape and then quit this. And now you can just restart your Nginx configuration, which is basically the continuation of the code. Um, to do that, I'll paste that here. Okay, so now I can I'm just gonna head back to my browser. Uh, um, so just try to reload this. Sometimes it because just will control function at files. Gonna hit this. So this should work in another just confirm this quickly. Sometimes oh gosh, current updates just a minute. So I had to just cross check this on the browser to confirm it's actually working. So this works as expected. So we do have our Nginx and SSL configuration working as you can see in the provided link, so HTTPS as opposed to HTTP. And because you're not running the actual application now, you're gonna have this bad gateway for now. So to finally just get this functional, we just go back to application, and then this time around, we do have our actual Unix configuration. We are not going to do the index underscore localhost. So we just do sudo npm start again, which runs the index file. And if I go back to the browser to reload this, it's still taking me, like I say, normally you go straight to meeting/start. So, but then in this case, we have our actual pop-up. We don't really have to go through any security issues, and then we have our SSL configuration work, and then we can still make it just a quick check. I'm going to create a new maintain again, and I'm going to use the same name of user, and then from this, if I turn on my media, I should have that working. You could join this like you did the very first time, and you shouldn't have any problems getting it to work. So this effectively ends our demonstration. We could just proceed with the very last part, which is getting an application manager to run the app as opposed to using npm. So that is PM2 or any other one you prefer to use. And I can just end this thing now. Close this. And on the very last step of PM2, if I copy this command, then I go back to my browser, I can just stop this and paste this here. Now this should also take a couple of seconds, maybe a minute max. And all it does for us is to give us our support of running without running in the background, so that when we exit, you still have it working. So if I go back here, and that is down now, and you run whichever one you want with the guide says sudo pm to start, which in our case will be index.js. So if I copy this and we'll go back to my terminal, if I run this, I'm going to have my application running by PM2. And it's going to run whether I get to the terminal or whatever. You can still configure it to even run on boots, reboots, and the like. So here, I don't need to go about setting. If I go to community dot MediaSFU.com, and then this I have to go to meeting/start or to a specific room. I'm gonna have this working. Okay, so that's technically ends our demonstration of how to install MediaSFU and get it to work as provided. For those interested in communication with MediaSFU Cloud, particularly Egress purposes like recording or AI agents and the like, you would want to watch the other guide specifically for each SDK. So there will be a guide for incorporating Angular, React.js as our web endpoints, and then Flutter, React Native, and then React Native Expo versions as your means of communicating with your application as opposed to going through a default front end. Okay, so that's all for now. See you another time. Bye.